All right, here we are. Thank you for staying. We get into the big stories, and a new opinion poll conducted by the Global Info Analytics in July 2022 shows that John Mahama of the opposition NDC is in a significant lead of 58% compared to the 31% in a hypothetical race with vice presidential candidate or vice president of our country, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. Again, it shows that 76% of the populace think the country is headed in the wrong direction. What are the underpinning factors? And is this a true reflection of the situation on the ground? We'll interrogate these matters thoroughly and also get some highlights from the Afrobarometer report, bringing you details as well as far as that latest Ghana Statistical Service, SHRAJ, and UNODC report talks about corruption. Now, joining us for the discussion, Dr. Osai Kwapong. He's a CDD fellow. We also have Dr. Kabiru Mahama. He is with the Office of the Vice President, and Musa Dankwa, Executive Director, Global Info Analytics. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'd love to hear from those on Zoom, just to clarify the sound bits. I'd like to hear from both of you.
Yes, good morning.
Okay, can I?
Good morning.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, gentlemen. Let me also come into the studio. Thank you, Dr. Mahama, for joining the conversation. Particular. Okay, so I look forward to a very insightful conversation. I'll start with you, Musa Dankwa, especially as you came through with this latest research piece as Executive Director of Global Info Analytics. The last time you came out with such a piece, there was some criticism from the majority side or the ruling government concerning your methods and all of that. Is it the same methods you used to come out with this research? Has anything changed?
Oh yes, significantly. As we said the last time, that the way we went about our last poll was purposeful. It was designed to give us something. It wasn't because we didn't know what to do. This time around, we ran the poll on an entirely random simulated system that picked the constituencies automatically without human interference. And it was deployed also randomly, and people were interviewed on the street randomly. So we kind of addressed the issues my colleagues raised at the time. So we have resolved all those problems.
Now, tell us a bit about, the meat of the matter has to do with those 2 points. 76% of the populace thinking the country is headed in the wrong direction. This feeds into the latest Afrobarometer statistics that we've seen, where upwards of 80% of the people, in fact, the lowest we've seen in over a decade or so, just about 11% saying the country is headed in the right direction. But let's focus on your report. 76% of the population thinks the country is headed in the wrong direction. Tell us how you went about this research. So your margin of error, how many people you actually interacted with, across which regions? I noticed you went to practically all the regions. Tell us a bit about how you conducted this survey.
Right, thank you very much. First and foremost, all we did was that we told the system to select 27% of the 275 areas that we have in the country. So the system randomly picked 27% of the 275% constituencies we have in the country, and that gave us the 75 that we had. Now that 75 then informed us as to what sample size we should take, because we have to look at the population of the areas we are sampling and then to determine which sample size will give us a margin of error of 1.73%. So our sample size, which was 5,490, was then allocated to each constituency based on the weight in terms of registered voters in that area, which is based on the EC register of 2020. And the people were interviewed on the street in at least 3 electoral areas of those constituencies randomly, without any pre-selection criteria.
Okay, so that is how you came by these statistics. And you feel it is aptly representative of the entirety of the country?
Absolutely. We have no doubt about that.
Let's do a breakdown of the portion that talks about 76% of the population thinking the country is headed in the wrong direction. There's a bit of a breakdown in terms of those who think it is, headed completely very bad in terms of being in the wrong direction, and those who are midway through. Give us a breakdown of the statistics.
Right. The survey showed that only 16% of voters believe the country is headed in the right direction, compared to 76%. If you look at our previous poll in April, the number who said we were in the right direction was 26. Now a drop of 10% within 90 days. And for those who said we were heading the wrong direction, has gone up from 67 to 76. And those without opinion currently stands at 8%, which was about 7% last time. So we have seen a deterioration in the polling numbers for those who think the country is heading in the right direction. Now, what we did was to go beyond this general headline, to look at really how the party affiliation really thinking in terms of MPP voters, NDC voters, and floating voters. But that will give you a better sense of what is happening.
Right.
Now, on that score, 63% of MPP's sympathizers believe the country is headed in the wrong direction.
Which is stark, isn't
and
it?
88% of, it's very stark, very, very stark from your own base. And 88% of NDC people believe the country is headed in the wrong direction. But a good measure of this is to look at the floating voters. 82% of them said the country is headed in the wrong direction. This must be a worrying.
I missed that. Which you say is what? Very worrying.
Yes, because as a government, they give you a better measure of really what is happening, because they're not aligned to either the opposition or your own base. They give you a fair assessment of what they feel is going on. And that number is 82% for floating voters.
I'm looking at the different dynamics, the president's approval and all of that. But even if you look at the direction of the country, like we've pointed to, wrong direction. So in April, those who had no opinion were 7%. Those who said right direction were 26%. Those who said wrong direction were 67%. In April, but now in July, that is, you look at those who have no opinion, it's shot up by a percentage point, 8%. And then when it comes to those who say we're headed in the right direction, it's taken a 10 percentage point fall to 16%. And then wrong direction has taken a 10% increment to 76%. The gender statistics are also in there. But then we have the direction of the country into age groups and then political affiliation, like you were mentioning. So right direction, 28% of those are in the MPP. For the NDC, only 6%, which is interesting. CPP, 8%, and it goes on. But for those who say it's headed in the wrong direction, like you mentioned, 63% of supporters of the MPP that you sampled said it was headed in the wrong direction. For the NDC, 88%. And this is where it gets interesting. For the rest of the parties, for this figure, CPP, 82%, wrong direction. PNC, 72%, wrong direction. PPP, 74%, wrong direction. Others, 82%. In other words, you would have an average of about, 77%, all of them saying the country is headed in the wrong direction. Then you come to the president's approval ratings. You would realize, again, and I'll end here as I wrap with you for this portion of the conversation. You would realize that for those in April who had no opinion, it stood at 6%. In July, it still stands at 6%. For those in April who said they approved of the president's handling of the country, it stood at 27% in April. It has taken a 4 percentage point decline in July, falling to 23%. And then of those who disapprove, it was 67% in April. Now it is 72%. What does this reveal to you?
reveals really what the direction of the country has confirmed. Generally, when people are not happy with the way the country is going, they tend to blame the driver. And looking at what is happening in the economy across educational sector and everywhere, things are really dire. And that is reflective in the polling numbers that we have. And I mean, for the president to sink this low at this point, and I think somewhere we must get to the bottom. Otherwise, this is going to really be very bad. I mean, for the government, because it's not a good number to be at, and the polling numbers are trending in the very wrong direction at the moment.
Well, at least for the presidency, I know of other countries, major countries, whose leaders have maybe something close to 20+%. So it wouldn't be terrible, but it's not a good place to be. I mean, on any scale, 23% is not a pass mark, not in any exam. But let me come to Dr. Osai Kwapong on this self-same matter. Doc, so considering this latest Global Info Analytics survey and what it evinces, what it shows, what do you make of it? Is it a fair reflection of what you see?
Thank you. Yeah, if you follow public sentiment on all matters, economics, the economy, the comments you hear from individuals, some of the agitations we've seen from organized labor, you can see why in such a poll discontent would be captured and reflected, right? We've seen occasions where one or two groups have demonstrated, they've pointed to things like fuel prices, the e-levy debate generated some discontent as well. So if you look at, food prices, transportation fares, all of those things. So if you look at some of the issues that have dominated public discourse, public conversations, you can actually see why those sentiments would be reflected in the poll that Global Info Analytics conducted. And especially too because of the use of randomization in the methodology, there you do know that you are getting as close to a representative sample as possible. Yes, they do indicate their margin of error because any social science researcher will tell you that any data you collect will have a certain amount of noise, in it. But the other thing that you also have to look at is if you also look at what the Afrobarometer Round 9 captured,
right.
then you can see that there's also validation to what Global Info Analytics.
Because there it is even over 80%.
Precisely. So if you look at direction of the country, if you look at rating of government economic performance, if you look at government's delivery of public services, you can actually see that the sentiments being expressed are quite similar in terms of what they captured and what Afrobarometer is capturing. And again, I think overall, when I look at some of these surveys and polls, I always say that as a consumer of them, you have to ask yourself, what sort of signals is it sending about what people are feeling based on their lived experiences, right? If I approach you and I ask you, is the country going in the right or the wrong direction? Chances are you are going to recall certain personal experiences. And those lived experiences, I believe, is what informs the way respondents actually do respond to these questions. If what Afrobarometer had found and what Global Info Analytics had found were at variance, total opposites, then you can start getting worried about.
Say if the Afrobarometer had said 80+%, but Global Info Analytics had said 20-something%, then you would see that.
Right. Or one said right direction, the other said wrong direction. Then you can start raising questions about the soundness of the methodology being used. But I think once you see some convergence around common themes, then you can be rest assured that the methodology is as good as it can get, recognizing that, again, no methodology is 100% soundproof.
Let me ask you this. These are dire economic times and we're headed to the IMF, but we're not the only country. Look at what has happened in Sri Lanka. So there are worse, look at some countries in South America and all of that going through quite some turmoil. But then people would quickly remind you of what we are sitting on. And of course, we've been told, Yatisikaso. So the question is, looking at the president's approval, for example, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo is not returning to the presidency. So, I mean, for him, maybe there may not be much to lose on a personal level, while the party has a whole lot it stands to lose. When you look at the president's approval by region, you would notice that in the Greater Accra region, the approval rating is only 13%, which is crucial because we know that in our politics, win the Greater Accra region and your likelihood of winning the election is really high, apart from the Ashanti region. It's 13% in the Greater Accra region. In the Ashanti region, the World Bank of the MPP, it stands at 33%. That is just about 33, I mean, it's stark when I looked at it. Eastern region, another region that has given a lot of votes to the MPP, it stands at 22%. The disapproval in the Eastern region is 70%. The disapproval in the Ashanti region is 60%. In the Greater Accra region, it is 82%. In fact, in the Volta region, but that's to be expected, the disapproval rating is 95%. But I want us to focus on these three: Greater Accra, Ashanti, Eastern. These seem to be sort of the kingmakers in a way when it comes to presidential elections. And as it looks right now, things are not shaping up according to plan. Just to add, when you look at the optimism with Nana Akufo-Addo as president, 44% are, in fact, 23% are optimistic, 32% are pessimistic, and those who are not sure are 44%. Either ways, it's not looking good. Your quick reflection on that before I come into the studio and engage Dr. Mahama.
Right. So for me, what it signals and points to is the difficult political terrain that the incumbent faces. Now, 2024 is 2 years away. We always say that in politics, one day is even a very long time, right? But there's no denying that the signals you're seeing coming from Afrobarometer Round 9, the Global Info Analytics poll, is that the incumbent is facing a very difficult political terrain as it goes into election 2024. If you compare that to the 2016 political terrain, you would notice that if you look at a number of the polls that I followed, some of the ones that I really liked, you would notice that the incumbent faced a very difficult political terrain as well. 2020, it wasn't so difficult for the incumbent. But this time around, you're seeing that the terrain is very difficult. The question, and as you rightly pointed out, the president is on his way out. He's not running for re-election. I would think that for the purposes of legacy, you would always want to leave office on a high. Right. But I think the other bigger challenge then is who pays the price for these numbers that we're seeing. Is this party going to be made to pay the price for it by defeat at the polls? And again, these early signals seems to show that the party may pay a price for it. But at the same time, between now and 2024, will things change? Will optimism get better? Will people feel better about the direction of the country? I think.
What do you think? What do you think on that specific? I mean, now we have $750 million to play with, which we are going to use for a number of projects. We're expecting money from the IMF, and we're being told that they are going to fast track this. So initially, we've been told first quarter of 2023. We may get it earlier than that. Do you feel there is the capacity to turn things around so that the spiral in the numbers could change?
The capacity to turn things around, yes, right? Especially with the support that we're going to be getting from the IMF. I believe that by 2 years, you would see some positive turnaround. Now, I don't know how significant that is going to be, and I also don't know how significant that is also going to be in terms of changing the perceptions and the feelings, of the voter, right? So if things begin to turn around, are they going to then say, you know what, we can forgive you for the 3-4 years of difficulties that we face? Or are they going to still say that because of what you took us through, even though we are beginning to see light at the end of the tunnel, we still believe that there's a political price to pay? And that is a decision that the voters are going to make. But I believe that some of these stopgap measures, and especially the IMF bailout, would definitely bring some stability to the economy. As to whether it would be strong enough and significant enough to alter the feelings, the attitudes and perceptions of the voters, I think with that only time will tell.
Let me come into the studio now and interact with, and thank you for your patience, Dr. Mahama. I just had to get this background to the conversation from our two other guests, especially as they are on Zoom, so I can have ample time with you as well. You're in the office of the Vice President?
Yes, please.
How does the presidency, the Vice President, how do they feel about this latest report?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ben. And then let me say good morning to Dr. and my brother, Musa Dankwa. You recall when the first survey came in April, and we had discussion on this. I was one of the lead critics of this particular survey, because there were some...
I think you together with, is it Dr.
Yes,
Mensah?
Dr. Mensah.
Right.
And then we were very clear in our mind that when you want to do a survey of this particular nature, you will need to be very clear in your methodology. You need a methodology that can stand the test of time. And you need to have, a research process that is devoid of petty errors and devoid of common mistakes when it comes to the ethics of the profession. Right. So I think people thought because it has something to do with the MPP presidential primaries and government rating, we were taking it personal, but that wasn't the case. And I must commend him for addressing most of the concerns we raised and most of the methodological deficiencies or defects of the previous survey. That said, I would also want us to start from the July, from the July polls, because that serves as the foundation with which we can have further discussion.
From the April polls?
From the April polls, we cannot rely on the April polls because you cannot.
You cannot rely. Can you rely on the July polls?
You can rely on the July polls.
You feel.
I feel like the methodology is sound. Okay. The processes is clear, okay, and that we can rely on the July polls. So I want us to.
So is that to say that as of what was done in July, if you accept the methodology, then you also, by extension...
By extension, I'll accept the results. Yeah, by extension, I'll say, and I'll come to explain. So I just want us to avoid the tendency or the temptation to be comparing April to July, because you are comparing apples and oranges, which is going to be problematic.
How so? It's the same Ghana. It may not be the same sample size and not the exact same people, but there's relativity in there. No matter the relativity, there's some,
It could equally be argued that they are all fruits, but apple is different from orange.
Why is April, let's say, an orange and July an apple? What makes?
Because in April, the process was, it was purpose. It was done to achieve a certain purpose. In other words, they used a non-random sampling technique. Now you are comparing a non-random sampling technique with a random sampling technique. The two don't match. And for instance, if you had gone specifically to a particular constituency to select, there's likelihood that you are selecting from an NDC stronghold because it's purposive. But with randomness, you are giving each and every subject an equal opportunity of being represented in your sample.
Which is what happened.
Which is happening in this particular case. So that's what I'm saying, that we should start from the July survey and then continue from there. The presidency and the vice president and the president of the republic, it's very clear that if the government is supposed to be rated, at this particular time, government will have disapproval rating. Assessment of the people, of the Ghanaian public on the performance of government is going to be bad, because what they feel now is what is going to feature into the survey or the responses they give to the survey. So with that particular understanding, government is not surprised that we have this kind of results, and it's not surprised that the Afrobarometer survey is giving consistent result with the Info Analytic survey. The only thing
But hold it there for me. I get the point, and I agree with you to a large extent. But an approval rating of 33% in the Ashanti region, 13% in the Greater Accra region, 22% in the Eastern region, where you've got some of the biggest margins. How much of a concern is that to the presidency?
I mean, as a government, it is very worrying that the people would have to rate or approve a president. I mean, the president, they rely so much on the hopes of the Ghanaian people was on the president. So the president, it would be worried about these particular results. However, the president understands, or the government understands clearly what is the reason why the people are rating the president that down. The downward approval or the disapproval of the president is largely because, look, we are facing an economic crisis. This economic crisis, government has no business trying to, deny responsibility for this. Government has the business of explaining. Government has taken.
The last time I heard from the vice president in whose office you operate, he practically did not accept responsibility for this. You know why? Because he cited a number of reasons, and he said COVID-19 and the Russo-Ukrainian war. Ghana did not produce COVID-19. Ghana did not bring about the Russo-Ukrainian war. Then he goes on to talk about the banking sector cleanup. He's talking, so what we expended in there. He's talking about the power arrangements and the spending. He is basically saying part of the problem was caused by external factors, the rest of the world. The internal problem was caused by Mahama and the NDC. Your government, this government, has not accepted responsibility.
Ben, government has taken absolute responsibility for the economic crisis we are facing. But government has also the responsibility of explaining to the people what is the nature of the problem and the cause of the problem. You cannot just tell the president that, look, Ghanaian people are not interested in knowing how we've gotten to this particular state. The president has taken responsibility by the fact that they have taken a decision to go to the IMF for a financial bailout. Government is taking fiscal consolidation measures. Government is taking expenditure rationalization measures. These are the responsibility, because if you don't take responsibility for a problem, you will not make attempt to solve it. So when I say government has taken absolute and complete responsibility for the program, I'm basically telling you that government understand that it is elected to correct or to solve problems. And once the mandate of the people has been given to the government to solve problems, you have no business telling another person to come and solve the problem. That's why we've not asked, or government has not asked President John Mahama to come back and fix his problem. We are focusing on other problems. Basically, the government is saying that, look, these problems were caused by A, B, C, D. And that A is as a result of...
In any case, we can't have the former president come and solve the problems.
Exactly.
He's not president.
Exactly. So the responsibility, the onus lies on the president or this current government to solve them. So that's what I'm saying. Government has taken responsibility.
A lot of people, I don't know, I'm sure you go on social media and you see the comments. A lot of people seem to dislike the chant of, oh, former administration, former president. We're 6 years into this administration. There are practically 2 years left till election 2024. That mantra, isn't it high time we dropped it?
I think that with all...
I mean, we don't hear Joe Biden, for example, or many other leaders across the world continuously saying, oh, Donald Trump, oh, Donald Trump. You don't hear that.
No, the rhetoric of that is there in the politics. Even in the America, you hear Donald Trump.
I'm saying it's not that, very rarely would you hear that.
Yeah, I'm saying that, look, if we have to detach ourselves from the politics, Ghanaians are interested in the solution. They are not interested in who caused the mess or who created the problem. The Ghanaian people are interested in the politics. But the MPP and the ruling government, for that matter, if the NDC operatives or the structure of the NDC is trying to blame the government, then the MPP has the responsibility of explaining to them that, no, you know what, tell us what we have done specifically to create this mess. But in our opinion, A, B, C, D was what you did, and that has created this particular problem.
So that explanation,
that explanation is for the NDC, for the Ghanaian people, for the journalists, for the media people, for the social...
Vice President, when he was at the Accra Business School, that explanation was for NDC.
That is not... We are saying the blame game. The Vice President the Vice President was even hesitant in trying to tell them, look, this was NDC government. He only took his time to explain what the cause of the problem was, or the causes of the problems were. So basically, the vice president is not blaming the NDC entirely, but the vice president is trying to explain how we came to find ourselves in this particular position. Ben, that said, I think that the survey and then the rating of the government is something that is worrying, but there is also another part.
Is it in consonance with what you, because I know you're also conducting your surveys, you together with Dr. Mensah, and is it in consonance? Because, you know, after the last survey, Dr. Mensah came and totally poo-pooed, debunked what that survey had said, and said that the approval ratings were high and all of that, and that in fact, I think, and I'm saying this cautiously, I could be wrong, if memory serves, that even then you would, if elections were held then, you would win. Is that the same picture you have now?
Now, so let's look at another part of that same survey, the performance of the government. If you look at their survey on government performance, it's still quite an optimistic future. Or
okay,
optimism.
So
this specific.
Okay, so I'm looking at that because that's on page 25.
25. The government performance.
It makes mention, and we can go to page 25 of the latest Global Info Analytics survey. It talks about April's polling when it comes to excellence standing at 5%. Now it stands at 3% per this survey. When you come to very good or good, in April, it stood at 24%. It's lost 9 percentage points. It's now at 15%. When you look at those who feel it is an average performance, it stood at 23% in April. It is 21% now, 2 percentage point decline. Very poor or poor, it was 48% in April. It's jumped 11 points to 59%, and no opinion, 3%. Your reaction?
Yeah, so if you look at this particular survey, basically it is telling you that, look, 41% of the Ghanaian people still have faith that government has done well or has done better. That is simply what it is telling you. That people who thought that on the average government has done better or has done well or has done excellent are about 41%. If you compare that with people who say that they don't have opinion, majority of the respondents says that, look, when you look at the future of this particular country, what do you think? What do you call it? Whether things will turn out better. This same pool is telling us that, look, we don't have an opinion now. They are holding brief for the government. Whilst another 25% say, look, things will get better. And another 32% say, no, things will not get better in the next few months or in the next few weeks. So basically, we are having to deal with 44% and 23%. And if this particular group and the concerns of these particular people are addressed, I'm sure that this government will be in a very good position to even seek the mandate of the Ghanaian people again. So basically, I take this particular results very seriously. The government take this results seriously. The government will be looking at addressing. The fundamental issue is that government is facing an economic crisis. It is not just the government of Ghana. It is across the globe. And that half of the world is actually going for financial bailout. This is the context within which we have the responsibility to explain to the Ghanaians. I believe that the Ghanaian people are discerning people. They would listen to the reasons. If they make sense to them, they would agree with the reasons. If they don't make sense, they will reject the reasons. The bottom line is that the people are feeling economic hardship. The people are feeling until recently, and I'm happy that fuel prices are coming down. I mean, they were feeling, hikes in petroleum prices.
The price of diesel is still a big problem. I admit, they are coming down, and it's a good thing. But I mentioned diesel example because, you know, farm equipment, a lot of our trotros.
It's an industrial fuel.
It's a serious problem.
Yeah, I mean,
that is something that
petroleum,
the government can tackle, because when it affects them, guess what? They transfer it to us.
I agree. I mean, diesel is an industrial fuel, so much of the productivity and economic growth will be dependent on how much the price of diesel comes down. So, but I'm just saying that looking at the development in the geopolitical development, the external forces, because we all agree, and there's no doubt in the mind of government and any objective listener that, like, 99%, in fact, 70% of the problem is external. There's no doubt in the mind of any objective economist or any objective, a bystander.
Talking to economists like Professor Bokpin and the rest, trust me, they don't agree with you. In fact, I was at an IMF program just 2 days ago, and Prof. Bokpin, points to what other economists in this country have pointed to. Our problem started long before even COVID. In 2019, we were already beginning to bleed, and I can go to some of my research and point out to you that we're already not doing the right things when it comes to handling our economy, even before COVID struck. So I don't know about the 70%.
Yeah, I'm very huge. Server tells that in 2019 we were bleeding. The person should provide you with the statistics to show that we're having problems. There is no single indicator, economic indicator, that was on a negative note or that was on a downward spiral prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. There was no single one. So that's why I've always been saying that people would now begin to attribute several factors. If you're having a problem, people can even go back to the time of Adams to try to resurrect problems that were causing the current situation. But that it may.
Let me bring you some statistics, and I'll start from the COVID era. Yeah. In 2020, when countries across the world were suffering the brunt of COVID-19, our neighbors like the Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, all of them had deficits below 6%. What was our deficit? 15.7%. As far back as 2019, our public debt had surged by about 105 billion Ghana cedis to 225 billion Ghana cedis, compared to the figure of 120 billion when the MPP took over the reins of government in 2016. The writing was on the wall. Yeah. We refused to see it. Look, our currency has lost 24% of its value since January 2022. Inflation has risen to 29.8%. This is just last June. It has exceeded the central bank's target band of 6 to 10% for 10 months running. You look at, and in fact, something that is interesting, year-on-year inflation, the rate, 29.8%. Guess what? It is the exact same rate we had in 2003 when we went HIPIC. Yeah. So how can you be happy about it?
Yeah, we are not happy. I'm not saying government is happy. And you are basically re-echoing the current sentiment, the current problem. The contention was that prior to, in 2019, we are facing problem. But this particular analysis is 2020 onwards. So yeah, we are not
2020 and then 2019.
No, 20. There's no single 2019.
No, that's
data.
2019.
Yeah, until you go there, you started with the physical deficit, which was in 2020. Maybe you come to that. You come to that. Maybe you do that. But in this particular data,
let me get to it for you. Okay. So in 2019, what I said, our public debt, we had accumulated 105 billion Ghana cedis in addition to what we already
that is not. But look, what was the debt to GDP ratio?
When you are adding debt upon debt, heaping debt upon debt like that, do you speak to economists?
Countries have had more debt position than that in terms of volume. But we are losing what is this? What are the debt is sustainability? Ben, let's stick to the issue. Look, we all admit that 2020 the economy has been in distress. That is a fact.
I'm saying
no government is. And I'm saying that from 2019, what was the debt to GDP ratio if it was in distress? So that's what I'm saying. That's the context. You don't just go and pick a debt figure which is 105 billion added to the debt stock and say there was a problem. Look at how much the economy expanded within that particular period. And you look at the debt to GDP ratio, and then if it was beyond 70%, then you can just quickly say that, look, we are already distressed in 2019. That's the point I'm trying to make. But the government position...
Must we hit 70% before...
No, I'm not saying we must hit 70%, but I'm saying that if your debt situation, almost every country, Japan, United States, Britain, they all borrow.
That is my problem.
They all borrow.
That is my problem when we go here, because any crack economist will tell you that some countries have over 300% debt to GDP ratio. But a lot of these countries, let's pick Japan. Japan has a lot of, 70, 80, 90% of its debt homegrown. It is from internal sources. Its external shocks are like this.
But
infinitesimal. You have a lot of external shocks that are beyond you.
It's not true that...
And mind you, what do they borrow for to do in these countries? They borrow for projects that are self-sustaining, internally generating. What do?
Ben.
We borrow for chop.
Ben. The point is that this government, even in the context of our domestic debt, is still the majority of the debt position until what you call the depreciation of the cedi that is making our foreign debt to come even at par with our domestic debt. So that is still similar. But I'm not trying to justify this particular point. I'm trying to just provide explanation to say that, look, let us not create a perception that, look, the economy has been managed into the abyss. That perception should be corrected. Government has a responsibility of solving these particular problems. We shouldn't shy away from that. Government has the responsibility of, again, explaining these particular problems. Okay. But what I'm just basically saying is that, look, government is committed to solving this particular problem. The economy is in crisis. It's not just Ghana, again, we talk of our neighbors, but people talk of Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire didn't have the problems that we have. Cote d'Ivoire never faced power crisis. They never faced financial sector collapse. This in addition to their COVID expenditure and our COVID expenditure, essentially, ours will be more than that.
Which power crisis are you referring to?
We had Dumsor, which we have to pay, we have to sign IPPs. That's why we're saying.
But Dumsor was solved before your tenure.
But why do we keep on mentioning Dumsor? We mention it because the payment, the IPP arrangement, the excess power.
We're talking of the
excess situation. That's what
excess power that we are using, but we always come back and say excess power. Plus, when you have excess power,
we are not. Look, if you want, Ben, go to the Minister of Energy.
You are well versed in economics. Yeah. You know about utility. Right?
I know about utility.
You know about how to maximize utility. So why exactly do we keep harping that point?
Look, we get to a point we get this utility. This utility was created because we had. Look, if you continue to drink water, the utility you gain from the first cup reduces. So if you have what do you call it, a power situation, a power crisis, and you want to fix it, you don't go taking a full gallon of water to drink.
Okay.
That's basically what happened.
Let's hold it there. So basically, according to Dr. Mahama, 70% of the problems we are facing are external, right?
Yes, please.
All right, just to quote you there. Let me come to Musa Dankwa as well, Executive Director, Global Info Analytics. I want us to look at corruption because of all this conversation we're having. I want us to feed it into the conversation. And I'm going to pick different things. Now, the latest Afrobarometer report, I'll start from somewhere, part of what you've done before I get to corruption, before I narrow it down. 87% of respondents in the latest Afrobarometer report say Ghana is heading in the wrong direction. Almost 9 out of 10, that is the 87%, say the country is headed in the wrong direction. Only 11% see things going in the right direction. That is a 24 percentage point decline since 2019. So 2019 till now, 29% have eroded when it comes to those who think Ghana is headed in the right direction. Interestingly, 85% describe the country's economic condition as fairly bad or very bad, which is up from the 62% recorded in 2019. And 72% say their living conditions are fairly bad or very bad compared to 58% 3 years ago. Let me also get to this statistic. As we have it now, when it comes to bribery, 27.6% of adult Ghanaians say they have paid a bribe to a public official, and persons aged between 25 to 34 are more likely to give a bribe, with the most educated being the most likely to be corrupt. Let's come back to the Global Info survey. When you look at page 29, state of corruption in Ghana, you show there that those who have no opinion, in April it was 9%, now it stands at 5%. Those who think corruption is improving in terms of dealing with it, April 14%, now 12%. They've lost 2 percentage points. Those who think it's the same, it's at par. 23% in April, 21% now. But guess what? Those who think it is getting worse, 54% then, 62% now. How does all of this reflect, putting side by side your analysis side by side with what the Shraj GSS UNODC document tells us? Hello, do we have Musa Dankwa? Please unmute, Musa. Please unmute for me.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
I think our poll validates what others have found. And it is consistently showing that people believe corruption in this country is getting worse. And you can see the trend. And I'm really worried that this trend continues this way. It's going to be very bad. We need to get to a point where people can start having confidence in the system in terms of fighting corruption. At the moment, it doesn't look good.
At the moment, it doesn't look good. In fact, when you go to the next page, it also, in fact, on the same page, it talks about whether the government is doing enough to fight corruption. On the same page, 29, the second part. Those without an opinion remain the same between April and July. Those who say yes, the government is doing enough to fight corruption, 23% in April, 14% in July, 9 percentage points lost. And then for those who say no, government is not doing enough, in April it was 66%. Now it's 74%. No surprises in there, right?
Not at all, not at all. And it moves in the same direction as the earlier question, directly correlated. And people don't see government doing enough, to be very honest with you. And in fact, if you remember, we did last time, there was a survey about the Office of the Special Prosecutor, whether they have confidence that he can deal with it. And people didn't have confidence. Once people begin to have confidence in the OSP and the concrete steps government is taking, specifically on corruption act and practices, we should see an improvement. Until that, I don't think this can improve or will improve.
Let me come to Dr. Osai Kwapong. When you go to the next page, in fact, page 32 now, you would notice that this conversation we're having, of course, I would like you to talk a bit about the corruption-related matter, but also look at the standard of living in the last 12 months. It makes for interesting reading. Those without an opinion, 7% in April, 4% in July. Those who feel their standard of living in the last 12 months has improved, 15% in April, 10% now. Another loss of 5 percentage points. Unchanged, those who feel things are okay, still what they were. 28% in April, 22% now, an 8 percentage point decline. But those who feel the situation has worsened, 50% in April, 63% now. That's a difference of 13%. How do you reflect on that? Corruption, per the various studies, the UN ODC study, the Afrobarometer report, and now the Global Info Analytics, and also the standard of living.
Sure. So if you would indulge me for 10 seconds, I just want to really commend Dr. Tia Mohammed for his response to the surveys. It's very refreshing to see someone in government see poll results that is not favorable and not quote unquote rubbish it. And so I am quite pleasantly both surprised but also very appreciative of the fact that he acknowledges that the survey results do send some signals about discontent with government performance. So having said that, if you look at again the corruption questions from Global Info Analytics, and you also look at the corruption report from GSS, the UN agency, as well as SHRAJ, you do see that there's really a growing perception of how rife the issue of bribery and corruption is in the public sector. In fact, we are yet to see the results on corruption from Afrobarometer Round 9 2022. But if you look at the last couple of rounds of Afrobarometer, one of the questions that I always look at when they ask, how many of the following do you think are involved in corruption? One of the response choices is none. And I use that to gauge the extent to which citizens give institutions and public officials a clean bill of health. And over the last couple of rounds of Afrobarometer, you are seeing no more than 5% of Ghanaians saying that none of these individuals across institutions, police, presidency, MPs, etc. So again, it does resonate with what others are finding in terms of, the corruption situation. The other point that I want to quickly make, though, is that when I looked at the GSS UN SHRAJ report, what I found very instructive is comparing the contact rate for these institutions vis-a-vis the bribery rate and then the value of the bribery. And you would see that there are instances where there are certain institutions with very low contact rate. So for example, prosecutors, judges, magistrates, the contact rate with the public as captured in the survey is 1.7%. But then the bribery rate is
very high.
Very, very high, right? If you look at Lands Commission, they have a contact rate of just 3.4%, but a bribery rate of 34%, and they have the highest bribery value.
The size,
I know the police-
1,669 CDs.
Right. The police have been, getting all of the headlines. But if you look at it, the police has what? A 36% contact rate. Yes, a high 59% bribery rate. But on the list of the institutions, the value of the bribery is 12. They are 12th in the ranking. I'm not saying that excuses that institution, but I think one of the things we need to also really probe is to try and understand why public officials or public institutions with such low contact rates do have high bribery rates. Because that means that for those institutions who are not that visible to the public, the cost of transaction between them and the citizens is quite high because of the bribery rate.
And it's good you've gone into that bits there. I just wanted us to take a look at the UNODC document as well to note some very important aspects of it, and you've already started doing that. So it talks about bribery in the public sector. And anyway, maybe I should quickly ask Dr. Mahama about this. What has happened to the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan adopted in 2014? I mean, if you know something about it, you can tell us. If not, but what has happened to it?
Yeah, I think that the plan was what, determined the president's decision to set up the Office of the Special Prosecutor, delinking that particular prosecutor
from the
Attorney General. And basically, that action plan is what is being implemented through the Office of the Special Prosecutor. But the current prosecutor, we all admit that he's doing extremely well. He's trying to be on top of the issues. But the issue of corruption is more about the reality of it and the perception of it. Because, look, if we have to admit, we have to go back to the words of the President John Kufuor, when he said that corruption is as old as Adam. It's been with us since the era of Adam. This statement was twisted and it was taken to mean that, look, he's not ready to fight corruption. But if you look at
wasn't that a bit of a shift because the start was zero tolerance for corruption? Of course, when you come and say corruption has been with us since the
when you say zero tolerance for corruption,
I love the man Kufuor, but you would want to hold him.
Yeah, you would. But when you take his words, if you say zero tolerance for corruption, basically you are telling us that, look, I'm coming to fight corruption. But when you come to face the reality and you know that the situation is even more outside the control of government, look, from the streets, from the individual level, from the household level, there have been corruption. We've all been corrupt. This country, we are all being hypocritical about the issue of corruption.
Oh, we're being hypocritical?
We are very hypocritical about the issue of corruption. And let me tell you.
Let me just ask you this.
Yeah.
When was the last time you were corrupt? Since you say we are all corrupt.
I'm saying that we are being hypocritical about corruption because, look, I sit in my office. People come to my office. The only source of income I get is my salary. But they expect you to pay school fees. They expect you to pay hospital bills.
Even you?
Yes.
Wow.
Even when I'm not a government, so to call, an MP or a minister of state, you do all those things. If you don't
how do you manage?
Basically, these are more personal. I'm sure that these are issues we'll go into another time. But basically, this is how serious the situation is. That is how serious the situation is. So if people, and you know what, if you are stand on corruption, if you're a government that wants to fight corruption, the people will punish you. And the very people who are crying that corruption is loud, they will not even come to your aid.
But let me ask you this. I always say this. You know, Singapore, before they became what they are now, it took them about 30 years. Yeah. The mindset, if you read Lee Kuan Yew's From Third World to First, was very much like ours. It takes time to change a mindset. But once you change it, people accept it, and then you move from there. Have you contemplated the British centuries ago? Yeah. It reminds you of Thomas Hobbes, what he says, life is poor, nasty, brutish, and short. They had to come out of that. My point is, if we keep crying wolf in this regard and say that, oh, the people will punish you, then it means that we'll always lack the political will and nobody will take responsibility, which means then that the system is going to remain what it is ad infinitum, forever.
I agree with you that government has to take responsibility, and if it demands a government falling for a different regime to come to set the system, I don't have problem with that at all. And this government, through its very acts of fighting corruption, has been penalized. And I can mention several. With the special prosecutor, is going after Sir John. People thought that it was corruption, but he went to the court and found that the law did not favor him. When government institution is fighting other government institution, it throws sunshine on the issue of corruption. Then the discussion in the media is out there that, look, there are corruption activity. When the media is doing its work and revealing corrupt practices, hitherto was hidden, people would think that this government is more corrupt than the government before. But that is not the issue. It's just that the media is now more proactive. They are now more daring. They are now more stronger and versatile in their research techniques.
But as we know it, a lot of the issues that have been brought up to you, and I can list quite a number of them, the response has been lethargic at best. And, you have instances where a body is supposed to address this. Before you realize the police has come in, there's a clearance, and then we're back to square one. People whose hands have, like I was sharing in my blunt thoughts, people whose hands have basically been caught in the cookie jar. What the legal people will say, in flagrante delicto. What happened?
Yeah, if your hand is caught in the cookie jar, it means that you are caught, pants down. You are basically caught in the act. And that there's no reason why you should, there's no exculpatory explanation for that particular act. But basically, then we are living in a country of law again. If there are deficiencies in the law, we should rather address that. But once we are living in a legal regime that the person have, there's some, safety for that person in the law. There's some refuge for that person in the law. You cannot blame the government for that. Look, the law empowers each and every Ghanaian to take.
So who is in charge of dealing with the law? You say the law creates loopholes for people to engage in this, and sometimes it's difficult for the law because you have the criminal code and you have the penal code, which determines what punishment goes for what. So if there's a loophole there, the law really can't get you. But you in government, especially your members of parliament, then determine what the law should be. So if you want to shape the law, you have ample opportunity to do so.
Parliament is an arm of government, but its autonomy is supposed to be respected. And I think that laws that's why executive doesn't make law.
Okay, point made. Let me get to this as we get ready to wrap the conversation, gentlemen. There's also this bit, of course, there's a bit about 26.7% of the adult population paying a bribe to a public official in 2021. But I want us to look at this before we end the conversation. There are also these permutations that you put out, Musa, and you suggest that if elections were to be held per the statistics you got from your survey, 58% of Ghanaians would vote for former President Mahama, and interestingly, he bears your name, and 31% in that hypothetical race would vote for Vice President Bawumia. When it comes to Alan Kyerematen, it widens to 61% for Mahama and the rest going to Alan Kyerematen. Give us a bit of an explanation about how you randomized this, got this figure, and how reflective you feel it is of the reality. And so this question will go to you, it will go to, and please unmute Mr. Dankwa, it will go to you, it will go to Dr. Osai Kwapong, and it will come to you as well as we get ready to wrap.
Right. We've mentioned the methodology already, which is randomized and across the 75 constituencies. These are simply aggregation of views from the voters, unweighted data from the poll. And in that response, 31% of voters are going to vote for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, and 58% are voting for John Mahama, and 11% said somebody else. Now, if you look at Alan has performed a bit bad this time around. It's now on 30% and Mahama on 61%. Now, what has caused this dramatic shift is one reason. Two, in the last poll, Dr. Bawumia wasn't doing well in the Eastern region. He's recovered a bit in the Eastern region. And then secondly, the northern region has proven to be a bit complicated in this round of poll. When John Mahama is running against Bawumia, the entire northern region, both MPP and NDC affiliates, coalesce around Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and vote for him. So John Mahama was performing abysmally against Mahama in the northern region. But when Bawumia isn't on the ticket and is ally, the entire northern region switch sides and now vote for His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, John Mahama. So that dramatic shift, which moves vote from MPP to NDC column, as what caused Alan to look very vulnerable or very shaky in the national poll compared to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia.
Okay, all right, apt there. Dr. Osai Kwapong, maybe a minute on this, and I'll come to you with a minute, and we're done.
Yes, again, it's capturing the mood of the electorate, as I've already said, a very difficult political terrain. Again, nobody knows exactly how the results of the election would shape up in terms of the actual percentages. But again, if I were an incumbent government looking at these numbers, I would be worried. But at the same time, I would also say to myself, between now and 2024, which of the stacks are stacked up against me, and do I have enough time to be able to change some of the narrative? Do I have enough time to turn things around to, improve my political prospects in the 2024 election? But at least where we stand today, I'm sure most observers would acknowledge the fact that the opposition is in a stronger position and the incumbent a lot more vulnerable. But we'll see what happens between now and 2024.
All right, the final bite to you. I have a little thing I'll add at the end in just 5 seconds. But
all right, thank you very much. I just want to associate with Dr. Osai Kwapong on this. I think when these results come up, the government would have to do some work in order to turn things around. And that work will require that, look, the challenges that we are facing in this particular economy has to be fixed. But if you look at the analysis between Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and then His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, you realize that, look, people are basically venting out the current sentiment in the way they see the election. But I believe that when the two are even going to go to the pool, a lot of factors will then come into play.
Of course, many dynamics
will then come into play. So basically, this is not, and I mean, my brother Musa also admitted that this is not basically to tell us that, look, this is the outcome of the 2024 election, but just giving a sense of the things that people...
I mean, it's a probability. It's hypothetical.
It's hypothetical, great. So that is what they are going to do. And I'm happy that, look, these results is showing that there is a future for the MPP, at least, through either Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia or Alan Chiramante. There is some prospect with the two.
So the MPP will break the 8?
The MPP has what it takes to break the 8. We have to do some work, of course. If we address the challenges, if the Ghanaian people do not feel hardship, I think the MPP will always be... And mind you, our results, our survey shows that, look, when it comes to numerical strength, with the two-party core supporters, MPP is slightly ahead of the NDC in terms of their core basis.
Right.
What determines who wins is the floating voters. How we treat these particular floating voters is going to determine whether we can break the 8 or not. And government is very focused on
all right. So just to wrap, in 10 seconds, if I gave you the Ghana card versus 1,000 interchanges, which one would you pick?
I would choose the Ghana card. Let me explain why.
Okay.
Look, the Ghana card...
15 seconds.
The Ghana card has a potential of giving us tens of thousands of interchanges, because when we have a proper addressing system, proper identification, risk of credit becomes high, investment goes up, GDP goes up, and you can get more money in order to...
On what roads will the people travel to do the things you're...
That's what I'm saying. That the Ghana, if you don't address systems, we don't build countries by monuments. We build a country by systems.
Road is part of the system.
No, the road is not. Road is an infrastructure. Road is, in fact, it's an infrastructure. The system on which to develop the road, if it's not strong, the road will I mean, the interchanges will, what they call, collapse, and you will not even have a way of rehabilitating them. So
and the Ghana card will do.
And the Ghana card is a vehicle. It's a vehicle. So when the vice president said that the Ghana card, he would choose the Ghana card over 1,000 interchanges, he was basically trying to avert the minds of Ghana. Look, this Ghana card has the potential of increasing the revenue base of this particular country. It has the potential of de-risking this particular financial sector. It has the potential of ensuring proper identity and social safety and targeting of the populace. Basically, that was what he was trying to say.
All right, point made. I would just say that you should also communicate with Professor Tefua, my good friend, and others that, look, a lot of people need their Ghana cards and they are waiting in queue. It's a good thing, and let's keep it up. But thank you very much. Guests, Dr. Kabiru Mahama from the Office of the Vice President. We had Musa Dankwa, Executive Director, Global Info Analytics. We also had Dr. Osai Kwapong, CDD Fellow. Up next, stay with us because the Defense and Interior Committee of Parliament is recommending a bipartisan committee to further investigate the happenings on Friday, the 17th of June at the Islamic SHS in Kumasi. We'll also bring you snippets from today's Habitat Fair kicking off. Stay with us.